This is Divinely Inspired, where we interview visionaries, change agents, and wisdom keepers who inspire us to live our best life and always show up with love. I'm your host, Divinely Jennifer. Welcome. Hello, beauty. Welcome to the latest episode of Divinely Inspired. I am your host, Divinely Jennifer. And last month, I had the privilege of interviewing the beautiful Jane Mayer. Jane inspires me so much as a young, feminine wisdom carrier from multiple lineages of the past, present, and future. I first met Jane thanks to the introduction of a mutual friend who thought that I would enjoy Jane's work as a mystic healer and alchemist of the voice. How right my friend was. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Jane to all of you. Jane Mayer is a singer-songwriter, poet, storyteller, and multidimensional guide to the shamanic realms. She is a multidimensional sound channel for the heart and the human experience. Her transformation weave rhythms from the heart of the earth, the harmonies of the deep south where she was born, and the cosmic hums of the mystic Holy One. She offers teachings, retreats, sessions, and sacred ceremonies around the world. Jane's medicine weaves plants, songs, and stories from indigenous lineages in Peru, the Shipibo and Keru specifically, Ireland, Avalon, Turtle Island, and the Hawaiian Islands, integrated with somatic and psycho-spiritual wisdom. Her sound medicine and healing practice weave timeless mystical wisdom with the mythology of her own childhood spirituality and her own heroine's journey. Her albums of music, Light, which she put out in 2019, and Roots and Stars, which was just put out last year, her poetry, her transmissions, and her teachings are born of this deeply personal journey of homecoming and the beautiful knowing that we are all both fully human and fully divine. In our sacred time together, we talk about music and nature inspiring Jane's childhood and really everyone's own inner child, addiction, fragmentation, and rekindling the flame of her soul, her experiences teaching English, drama, and science in South Los Angeles, her heroine's journey and the heroine's journey of birth, death, and rebirth, her own psychic reawakening, her sacred journeys with plant medicine, shamanism, and ancient earth wisdom in Peru, as well as the commercialization and exploitation of plant medicine in Western culture. You want to come say hi? Say, she just has to bomb every video I do. We talk about becoming a good keeper of the medicine and initiations into light and love, creating a safe space to be and fully express ourselves once we make peace with the shadows and wounds within us. We talk about channeling the word through music and song, the alchemization of the darkness and light, and letting love in. As hard as that might be sometimes in our crazy, chaotic world, and pushing the pause button to let that love in. So I hope you will listen to it all the way through because this interview is different from previous episodes of Divinely Jennifer because at the end, Jane blesses us with not one, but two of her beautiful songs. And yes, all of her info is posted with the video. So you can find her on multiple social media channels as well as Spotify and SoundCloud. I cannot wait for you to hear her music and meet this beautiful soul. And in the meantime, you can find me at divinelyjennifer.com. So with no further ado, here is Divinely Inspired with our magical guest, Jane Mayer. Jane, thank you so much for joining us here today on Divinely Inspired. You know, I've been watching you share on social media about your journey with music and to Kauai and having my own experiences working in your holy voice class and what that opened up for me as far as expressing my divine truth was so powerful. So I really just felt so called to bring you on today to share your story and your music with my listeners today. So thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. It's really a pleasure to be here and so looking forward to seeing the medicine that we weave together in this
Me
time.
too. Oh, I
Thank
just got
you.
chills when you said
Yeah.
that. And I feel like I really
Yeah.
want to let's start at the very beginning. I just had Julie Andrews' voice in my head there, and just your story having grown up in Birmingham, Alabama,
hmm
and what was your connection to the divine like as a young child, and how did you discover ways to express that, or how were you not able to express that as a child?
Mm, what a beautiful question and so pertinent. I feel like what's unfolding for so many of us right now at deeper and deeper levels is how we actually reconnect to our joy. Like how do we actually get beyond all of this pain and suffering and come back to that innocence and that joy? And there's a lot of that I could share about that. But for me as a child, so I was born into this community in Birmingham, Alabama, and this very beautiful, privileged, religious Southern community. And there were parts of my being that were adequately given space to fully express themselves, and parts where I felt deeply cut off from my true nature as time passed. And, for me as a young child, I think the way that I was most deeply connected to the divine was really through joy, through joy and play and music. If you someday there will be a vault of the Jane recordings from childhood because they're pretty spectacular. I was a pretty precocious little kid, and one of the ways that I, really expressed myself and had the most fun was I would go outside for hours at a time and I would just make up songs. And there's these videos of me swinging or playing on the monkey bars and just singing and singing and singing from just the top of my lungs and the deepest parts of my belly. And that was a real place for me, of a place of just that open-hearted, unmitigated expression that we naturally are. Yeah. And, as I got older, there's so many things that occurred that slowly start to shut down that natural openness that we experience as children. Um, but yeah, that was really it for me. It was like being outside, connecting to nature, and making music, which is still true all these years later.
Yeah. Well, did you sing in choirs too? Did you take voice
hmm
lessons, all of that as well, that more traditional path?
I did. So I guess when I was probably, maybe in my 8 or 9 years old, my beautiful parents signed me up for theater classes, and I started doing this. I would go to summer theater at this place called Town and Gown in Birmingham, and just really fell in love with the art of performance and the art of storytelling and the art of coming together in community to tell stories. That's something that still feels really alive for me. And then I started taking voice lessons and really did go down a very traditional vocal performance acting path for many years, actually, until my addiction just pulled that full out from under the rug for me.
Your addiction. How did that
Yeah.
manifest itself?
Well, I had some pretty significant unprocessed trauma from childhood, and what I know to be true is that when we have these parts of the subconscious or unconscious body that are fragmented, right, that are held separate or that we have to repress, after certain periods of time of that energy being caught in loops inside the consciousness, it gets quite uncomfortable for the physical body. very uncomfortable. And, one of the ways that we navigate that experience of discomfort of being inside our bodies here on this planet is we find ways to numb it. And we find ways to really continue repressing that. And I started drinking. I really held out for a long time. There were many other coping mechanisms and strategies like perfectionism and performance, and like gaining a lot of validation and attention from the outside world allowed me to keep a lot of that at bay, as well as also some really beautiful resources like human beings who really loved me and a group of friends who really loved and cared about me. But when I went to college and a lot of that fragmentation really started to present itself, that's when I started drinking when I was 19. And for 7 years, it was a pretty fast spiral into some deep addiction. And the more numbing I got, the more I wanted to be numb.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. It's interesting because I'm wondering what your becoming sober, what that opened up in you creatively, because something that we saw in 2020 was, wine and alcohol sales went up something like 30-40%. And I know for myself, I was drinking so much wine as a numbing agent. And many women I've talked to suddenly in 2021 said, I can't do this anymore. And we all noticed as soon as we stopped having alcohol that our creativity just skyrocketed. Our ability to express ourselves skyrocketed. So going back for you as a 20-something-year-old woman, how did your getting sober and recognizing that you had this addiction to a numbing agent open up your voice and your creativity?
Well, it's interesting, when I look back on that time, I was living in New York City in my early 20s when I was really in the depths of my addiction, and I was waking up and I was waking up at 5 a.m. and going down to the Actors Equity building and sitting in line outside the building to audition for plays and musicals. And I was functioning enough that I would get up, and I was still in some ways feeding that creativity, but it was a feeding that was around performance and achievement. It was this way that we sometimes, with our creative energy, we focus so much on the production of it, on the accomplishment of it, that we're not actually nurturing the true essence of it. And so I would get home from auditioning by 9:30, 10 a.m., and then I would be full on in my addiction with marijuana and opiates if I could find them, and alcohol, and then the rest of the day would just be gone. And so there's a whole journey around that, around me sacrificing my creativity for love and sacrificing my creativity for addiction, and moving into the more business oriented parts of the theater and music industries, which I did for several years. But when I finally got sober at 26, I left New York and I moved to Los Angeles because there was an intuitive knowing in my being that I had to completely start over, that I was so close. And it's so interesting. I can remember, Jennifer, when I was working at an advertising agency in Times Square, and I have this day, I don't know if I still have the writing, but I was so deep in the last parts of the addiction, and I remember writing, "The flame of my soul is dying." And I could feel it. It was just this tiny little light buried in a field of darkness. And when we talk about creativity, that to me at this point in my journey, creativity is like inextricable from the life force. We are naturally, in the essence of our being, creators. We are naturally designed to emanate life in some way, shape, or form, whether that's children or gardening or making art or making medicine. And so when I got sober, it took me probably a couple of years to really like land. I mean, I was deep in addiction, so it took me a couple of years to really land. And what I started noticing after about 18 months is I felt this like that longing, that calling again, that was like, who are you? What are you doing? What are you here for? What are you going to actually do with this precious life, as Mary Oliver says? What are you going to do with this? And, it took another few years and another couple of heartbreaks and heartaches and things for that fertile essence within me. I guess I was probably about 5 years sober when I got divorced, and then it was just like, and I was like, wait a second, I like to write poetry. What? And I think my poetry is helping wake me up. Wait a second, I want to make music. What's going on? And it was just this fountain of creative energy that started to come back online.
Wow. Yeah, I can relate to the leaving. I actually, it's funny how the universe spurs us in these different directions where we get these little signs, but we don't follow, and these little intuitive hits, and we don't follow them until the universe finally says, all right, well, I'm just going to drag you kicking and screaming, and you're going to like it.
Totally. And you'll thank me for this one day.
Right, exactly. So here you found yourself in Los Angeles. Were you acting in LA as well? Were you back in that world?
No, once I got to LA, I just focused on my sobriety, and I got like an office manager job at an not like a marketing branding agency. And I just really like showed up for life, just very basic, one day at a time. What does it look like to actually engage with the human experience without a numbing agent?
Mm-hmm. And then once this well of creativity started coming out of you, emanating from you, did you decide to follow that professionally, or was it something that was simply soul medicine for you?
So at first it was soul medicine. So after I'd been sober, I guess about 2 years, I started having this question that I was saying, like, what are you doing? And for me at that time, it was a necessary part of my journey to explore this teacher archetype. And I went back to graduate school at UCLA, and I got my master's degree in education, and I taught school in South Los Angeles for 5 years. And but it was incredible, because what happened was I got my master's degree in education of English literature and education of science, which is a whole story. But when I went to go look for a job, the job posting, I mean, this is how much we're loved, when we really see the whole picture. The job posting that was needed at the school that was opening was an English teacher who could teach theater. And I was like, that's me, I can teach theater. And so through the generosity of this great mystery, I got to get paid to reconnect to my creativity. I got paid to sit with 13-year-olds and open up like scenes and teach them, like, oh my God, I remember this. Yeah, I studied this. And it just started to bring it back online for me. And I also was teaching 10th graders English, and my kids, many of my kids had been through very traumatic experiences, and the education system can be very traumatic for kids of color, and the way that we there's just so many layers to that. And so I found this program that was called Get Lit, and I think I probably mentioned this to you guys in the Holy Voice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we made some, yeah. So there was this program called Get Lit that is a nonprofit organization in Los Angeles, and they work to reconnect children from inner city LA to poetry in a way that isn't about the construct of Yeats and Mary Oliver onto children of color, but actually reconnects them to poets from their own communities and to the living essence of poetry. And then teaches them how to do spoken word and do performances to reclaim their soul essence through spoken word poetry. And so I think it was the third year of teaching, I started doing this program called Get Lit with my 10th graders. And it just, honestly, I was going through a divorce and I was teaching Get Lit at the same time. And something in me broke wide open and I came alive. Yeah. It
How
was
did you
really
know?
spectacular.
How did you know? Was it a physical feeling or spiritual? I mean, what, when you're just looking back now going, I came alive. And and I feel like there are a lot of people right now who are coming alive. It's like their
Yeah.
computer is
Hmm.
actually fully booting up. It's not there's no
Yes.
50% anymore. So how did that manifest for you? How did you just go, whoa?
Hmm.
Was it an instant moment or a slow
It's a really good
progression?
question. So for me, the one of the things I really hold as true is that birth and death are really intricately intertwined. And in some ways we could say that the birth death portal is exactly the same tunnel. It just depends on which side we're entering into and which side we're exiting from. Um, when I was going through my divorce, which I think is actually, I really want to speak to this because I think one of the actually most profound places that women are going, a lot of women and men at this point in our collective evolution is through really alchemizing the distorted paradigms around marriage. And we could go into a whole conversation about that, which we may not have time for today. But for me, I became aware when I was 31 years old. I was like, whoa, I entered into this contract and I'm not actually sure that this is the right person for me. I'm not actually sure that this is where my life is going. I'm not actually sure that the constructs I was given by the picture of my mother and father were right for me. And um, I went through a very painstaking journey to decide to get divorced, and it included shedding a lot of stories around the religious component of divorce and what will people think about me. It was very important to me what people thought about me and what will they say, and I'm going to be that girl who got divorced and all of those things. But once I finally made that decision, and once I was in the process of like, I'm going to face this fear, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to let this entire identity, this entire world, this entire life, this entire trajectory, the visions, the dreams, I'm just going to let it die. And when I was in that process, so it was like this shedding of like consciously choosing to let go. Then at the same time, I was teaching this class with my students. And I found a poem called The Journey by Mary Oliver. And she came, God bless Mary Oliver, one of my teachers from across time and space. And she just came into me through the veils. And she gave me this poem about what it means to leave behind the old structures. And we can probably link it here for people. But what it means to really like follow your own inner voice, which is so much of the medicine and teachings that I have embodied and carried. It's like she actually has a line in the poem where she says, and a new voice, one that you slowly recognized as your own, led you deeper and deeper into the world. And that's what happened to me. And I very distinctly remember, I'm going to speak to this exact moment because it was so important. I sat down to write this response poem to Mary Oliver, which was part of the Get Lit curriculum. And something happened. It was this experience. It was like one of my first shamanic experiences where I sat down to write, I felt some sort of channel open to somewhere or something that I didn't understand. And I could feel the world around me getting this very diffuse quality, this like dissolving quality around me, you know? But I could feel that there was a channel in me that started to write itself, and it started to write this poem. And that was a pivotal moment for me because I actually felt in my body what it feels like to be fully present and alive and connected to that creative life force. And once I felt that, there was no going back for me.
Yeah, because what I'm hearing is it wasn't just an awakening, it was a death and a rebirth.
Yeah.
You had to let that part of yourself, that old part of yourself die around those older constructs of marriage and religion and judgment, and really step into Jane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How long after that moment did you keep teaching?
I kept teaching for another year and a half. Yeah. But once that spark of creativity opened, and once that reconnection to the divine opened, it started to shift things in my life pretty quickly. And the then of course the what happened was, then it was like, oh my god, the construct, the identity of being a teacher in this way is no longer going to fit. And then the construct and identity of living in Los Angeles no longer fits. And I think that's one of the hard things when we start to awaken, which, like, for me, the journey of awakening is a long series of death and birth. It's just like, oh, I'm dying again, crap, oh my god, I'm dying again. Okay. A lot of identities shed in pretty short order. And, in our culture, we don't teach about this. We don't teach about awakening. We don't teach about the shift in consciousness or the birth-death portal. And there are so many places that people start to hang on, and I can see so many times in my life that I'm about to die again. And I'm like, oh God, not this one, please, not this one. And it's like, no, you got to give it all away. You got to give it all away. So it was about another year and a half. And then I that's when I really started my journey in earnest.
I'm laughing in solidarity.
I'm sure you are.
Just, yes, can relate. And I'm sure the people listening and watching are also relating so much to all of the shedding and letting go that they've done over the course of their lives, and especially in the last year and almost 2 years now, and that feeling of, no, not again, wait,
Mm-hmm.
hold on a second.
Totally.
Right. So
totally.
where did life take you at that point when you said, I can't work in this model anymore?
Wow, that's really when everything changed. That was in 2016, the end of 2015. I started noticing that the only thing I was interested in was spirituality and human relating from a very deep place, and authentic human relating and creativity. And I was doing my best to do that inside schools. And my eighth graders, God bless them, I'm sure I had a soul contract with most of them. The first semester of my eighth graders year, that last year, I was like, we're not doing literature. We're actually going to study Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly. And I created an entire curriculum around Daring Greatly, which I'm sure actually was super beautiful for them, even though it was way over their heads in a lot of ways. So I did try, and I did try, but at some point it just was too constrictive, that identity. And I made the decision to, something very deep started opening in me. And as I went through that divorce, and as I started to live alone in my home, and actually was falling in love deeply with someone else, these gifts started really coming back online in consciousness, and I started having a lot of my psychic gifts come back, and waking up in the middle of the night and having spirits in the room and having prophetic dreams. And as a little girl, I had I can remember having a series of prophetic dreams, and then they just shut down. You know, certain amounts of trauma will shut down those gifts. And once I went through the divorce and my nervous system, I was sober and my nervous system had a certain amount of safety and stability, and I had spiritual teachers connected to me, it just, all of those gifts came back. And something very deep within me started calling me to travel the world and to just pursue the mystery. And I didn't even really know what that was. The only thing I could connect to was I'm supposed to travel the world and learn from spirituality in different cultures. And so that's what I did. And I quit my job and I packed up my house and I put everything I owned into a pod, and I put everything I thought I would need for 1 year into my car, into my little Prius. And I literally drove away from Los Angeles into the heart of the mystery.
What was your first destination?
My first destination was Oakland, California, and I went there for a month. I had started in this kind of journey of awakening. I was supporting the blossoming of a nonprofit organization called the Teaching Well, which is my former business partner is in Oakland. And the purpose of that organization was to bring mindfulness and stress reduction and spiritual concepts to teachers. So that was really the bridge for me. It was like, okay, there's all this spiritual awakening happening for me. How do I bring that back into the education system? And so I went to Oakland to help launch that nonprofit organization. And after I left Oakland, I went to Peru, and that's when my life really changed.
Tell us about Peru.
Mm. Mm. I feel deeply indebted to Peru and to her medicine keepers and to her mountains and her jungles and her medicines. And, Peru, I feel like Peru found me. She just, it was like, you got a lot of work to do, honey. You actually have no idea how much work you have to do, but we're going to connect you to some really beautiful, loving beings, and we're going to drop you in exactly the right place, and we're going to give you the money and the time and the resources to really go for this. And so I went to Peru for the first time in 2016, drank ayahuasca for the first time, drank wachuma for the first time, started learning about the shamanic traditions of the southern hemisphere and the Andes Mountains, and my whole life changed. Yeah.
It's surprising to me that this was only in 2016.
Me too.
Because you carry so many, one of the things that I love about your work is you carry so many different archetypes within you that I don't know. I mean, it was either one freaking intense journey for you over the last 5+ years, but also that as part of your awakening, that you rekindled that spiritual connection to those archetypes that you incarnated with from all those past lives and past teachings.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I really received that. And I can get really nerdy about myths and archetypes, and my soul is like, ooh.
I'm happy to geek out as long, that's definitely can be part of this interview.
Okay, great. So I do think I incarnated with a lot of memory. I think I incarnated, many of us are, I'm sure many of your audience and your clients and your community are medicine women and keepers of medicine from across time and space. So I do think I came with it's like I don't want to say a powder keg. It is actually kind of like a powder keg. It was like this perfect mix of a lot of memory and a lot of gifts and a lot of power and like capacity mixed with a significant amount of trauma. And so the combination of that, it's like as soon as you actually touch that trauma and you start to unwind it, it's when there's a lot of trauma, you have to access your resources real fast. And what happened to me, and when you say it was a short journey, it was, but it was a short, fast, hard, deep initiation. And, we don't get to choose our initiations, they choose us. There are many times in the journey that I'm sure teachers that I was working with were like, you're going too hard and too fast. But I needed that for whatever reason. And it was hard and dark and fiery. And I wanted to kill myself multiple times, not just die, but like actually wanted to get myself out of this life, this incarnational space, because the initiations were hard and fast. And, you know, I feel very grateful that at this point now in 2022, I feel deeply settled in the center of my being. I feel that those archetypes have landed at a really beautiful ground, that I feel really resourced and available to serve. And I have an awareness that, so many of us go through these initiations in a very intelligent time frame because we need to be available to serve, by the time the collective is ready to do the same.
At what point in all of those initiations did you start channeling in the music?
Yeah, so I had started when I was still teaching in school. The last like 6 months or last year and a half, maybe I was teaching. I was like, I want to sing again. And I got two of my coworkers to start a little band with me, and we would get together once a week and play music after school. And it just started really bringing me alive. But it was still in this like performative arena. And when I started going to Peru, one of the first shamanic lineages I was really introduced to and initiated into was the Shipibo lineage. And for those of your community who don't know, the Shipibo are a community of indigenous wisdom keepers who work with the medicine of ayahuasca, and they live in the Amazon jungle off the Ucayali River. And the way that we work with ayahuasca in its most traditional sense is we take this entheogenic medicine, this psychedelic medicine, and the indigenous healers sing songs that they call icros. And the icros themselves are living blueprints from plant spirits. And so you'll be in the medicine space, and they'll be able to see this blocked energy in your consciousness, this place where the life force, that creative spark, is not living fully. And they will call on a specific tree or a plant spirit that they intuitively know from all of their years of training and study is the exact consciousness that will open this blockage in your energy field. And so they would come and sing to me, and they're just singing, 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 singing. And then you're just puking because you're puking out all of that trauma and that karma and the places that the energy's blocked. So once I had been on that journey of my own healing for a period of a couple of years, and I had started doing plant diets with healers and starting to receive my own initiations, my own tree spirits, my own plant spirits that were getting put in my little basket of tools, I started to learn to sing Icaros. And I'll share this one story. I was sitting at my dear friend's house in the Sacred Valley of Peru, and I was integrating a plant diet. And I said to my friend Michi, I said, can you give me the Shipibo words for connect me to my voice, connect me to my power? Because I was facing some things in the integration process where I could feel I was dissociated from myself and from my voice. And he came out and gave me the Shipibo words, and I just sat there and I heard this rhythm, this song, like just this melody, this repetitive melody coming in to my consciousness. And then when I started adding the Shipibo words to it, I could feel it. It was just like, oh my God, now I'm remembering how I use my voice to find myself. Because when you sit and sing the same words over and over and over and over again, Mepin pal, mepin noi, mepin pal, mepin noi, No ya no nereri oshibogi. When you're doing that, you're focusing the consciousness. You're breaking these contracts of dissociation. You're connecting into your inner light and your inner power. And yeah, once I remembered that, I mean, that opened a whole other level of of power and like, oh my God, yeah, I remember. Oh yeah, I remember how to do this. And, of course, for women in the Western world, this is one of the places we've been most deeply dissociated from our medicine. Women are keepers of song and keepers of drums and keepers of dance and keepers of the sacred fire. And when we got disconnected from our indigenous roots in Europe, we lost a lot in that way.
Yeah. Thank you to the church for that.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's part of what's happening now. I mean, I'm listening to you share these stories and I feel the sacredness of the ceremonies. I feel the
Mm,
ancient wisdom in the ceremonies. And really a concern that I have as a space holder, I guess you could
mm,
say, is I see that there has been this dependence upon some plant medicines in a less than sacred way. It's almost become part of pop culture. Oh yeah, I'm doing an ayahuasca
mm-hmm,
ceremony. Oh yeah, or people who are smoking cannabis every day, or it's one thing if you have cancer or you're in a lot of pain as a medicine, but I feel like we've moved away from the sacredness and we're constantly through these medicines reaching for something that is already within us as is
hallelujah.
as it's currently being used. And so it makes me it just is like there's something warming in my soul as you're describing this because of the ancient wisdom that hasn't necessarily been passed on to a lot of the people who are facilitating these types of ceremonies right now, especially within the US.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. And this is where, this is one of the deep shadow frequencies in these fields, right? Is this place where um, our trauma, our desire to escape ourselves, our desire to escape reality as it stands, um, then also get projected onto the medicines. And when we aren't conscious of our habitual nature of seeking outside ourselves for the answer, that also gets projected on the medicines, right? And then we begin to use and abuse the medicines. And um, so many of our indigenous brothers and sisters, this is a real pain point, a real place of suffering for them, not only because it's disrespectful, but also because it cuts off the actual medicine. Um, there are on this planet what I have started referring to as lineages of living light. What I mean by that is they are, it's interesting that, okay, I'm receiving this like visual and description. I've never heard it in this way before. They're golden roads back home. They're golden, well paved, well tended, deeply loved ladders, golden chains, pathways back to God's source, which lives within each of us. They live and run through the Vedic traditions. In India, they live and run through indigenous communities around this planet. They even live and run through actual mystical Christianity, right? When you pull out the church and we reconnect to mystical Christianity, what came through the Essenes and
Yeah.
the Cathars. And um, when you, oh, it's going to make me cry. When you feel the power of those medicines and those lineages. And you feel what it's taken for human beings who incarnate here to do the work to hold and tend those lineages in a good way so that we can all get home. You you naturally want to respect that, and you naturally want to honor it, and you naturally want to come into deeper and deeper integrity so that you too can become part of that golden chain. And I have a lot of compassion. I mean, there were so many times in my own journey when I was fully projecting my own egoic, Western capitalistic desires onto the medicine path for sure. And it's been a huge, I've gotten schooled in so many different ways, and I'm still getting schooled. I'm still learning. So, but it's a challenge, it's a problem. And I do believe that in a lot of ways, the solution is white people, is people like me. I mean, I know this is part of why I'm here, because the solution in some ways is people who come from privilege and capitalism and whiteness to actually humble themselves to learn and to become good keepers, not necessarily to give all of the medicine away, but to start to weave people back, right? To hold these lineages in a good way and work with the Western world.
Mm. It's such a beautiful vision of these golden paths. And one of my favorite modalities that I know you've worked with to help people to, I would say, awaken to their shadows and the
Mm,
pathway to their gifts is through the gene keys.
mm,
Because there's so much wisdom, sacred ancient wisdom in them,
mhm.
but also so easily applied to modern life if you're willing to go there.
Yeah.
If one is willing to go there, are there? Well, you left Peru, you went back to
Mhm.
Birmingham at some point, and now here you are in Kauai, the beautiful, beautiful energetic vortex of Kauai. How do you
Mm,
see your love? I was going to say love of all these different tools, but just truly, deeply your love
mm,
as part of your essence, um, shining a light on those who are ready for it and being of
mm,
service as people are awakening to, you can call it the new earth, you can say to this golden age, the transition, whatever you want to call it, that you've had this swift and intense initiations over and over. And I almost see you like, how will you be using your love to initiate others?
mm. Oh my God, this is such a good question. Thank you. And thank you for framing it that way. So, these stories of Peru, and I went to India and Thailand and Ireland and Hawaii and all of these places, which are also part of the journey. But for me, there was a very, very particular place in my consciousness that only Hawaii has been able to heal. And that place is, and I think it's partially about just my own soul's evolutionary journey, and I think part of it is the timing that we're all in, and I think part of it is Hawaii, and I actually know a lot of it is Hawaii. It's her medicine. um One of my, this is really important that I'm sharing this in this moment. I have that awareness. One of my gifts, one of my deepest gifts, is to be able to travel to the ends of the universe, to the edges of the universe, to find soul fragments and to find places where we are not living in wholeness, and to I mean, just, it's almost like a Quidditch in like Harry Potter, where you're just like, where is it? Where's the fragment? Let me find it. Let me bring it back. And it's one of my gifts, and it's why people come to work with me, a lot, because it's a gift I have. However, there's a shadow to it, Every gift shadow. And the shadow of that gift is that there can be an incessant need to keep seeking shadow. And I've watched this collectively in the past couple of years where there's just this like, there is a tipping point where the incessant need to keep tracking shadow is actually preventing us from fully transitioning into life, right? Which is naturally full of shadow and light at the same time. And so for me, when I got to Hawaii, she wanted to pull that story out, that identity, the identity of the warrior, the identity of the shadow keeper, the identity of like, let me track and heal all the things. She was like, listen, we're done with that. I want you living in love. I want you focusing your energy on joy. I want you focusing your energy on pleasure. Of course, when we live life, there will be naturally shadow that arises to the surface, right? So a large part of my medicine is has really been shifting into what does it mean after we've done all the shadow work? Then what? Right? And it's like that's I feel like that's where we are. Many of us are collectively. It's like, okay, if we want a new way of living, we actually have to construct and build and live inside the new way of living. So for me, my medicine is now it's the same medicine, but it's coming at it from a different lens, which is how do we fully focus the energies and power of love and truth and light into the creation fields
Mm.
rather than the shadow fields. And um, how do we let our inner children who have been so wounded by this culture, how do we create fields in consciousness on the planet where they actually have somewhere to go once they're healed? Because that's the problem. That's one of the like pain points right now is that there's like, well, let me heal, let me heal, let me heal. But then there's nowhere to go where it's safe. Once I've gotten to a certain point in my consciousness, where can I be fully expressed in that safety and that beauty and that consciousness and that joy and that goodness? And I feel like what's being anchored here on Hawaii and it's being anchored in other places around the planet where people choose to anchor it in harmonic alignment with the land itself is we're creating these fields where it's like it's safe for your inner child to play here. It's safe for you to enjoy the innocence of your sexuality. It's safe for you to create. It's safe to feel pleasure. It's safe to play. It's okay. It's okay to play. So a lot of my energy is being focused on that now, of like teaching people how to be born and die, and then teaching people how to weave these fields of pleasure and creativity and love and innocence. And some of that is continuing to be focused on, you know, doing high touch, like deep dive work with people, both one-on-one and in small groups. But there's also new music coming, you know, new music that is less about giving people a pathway through the darkness and more about teaching them just to keep coming back home, come home, come home, come home, come home, or to expand joy, right? Like we can actually expand entire universes through the power of our consciousness.
And the power of our voices.
And the power of our voices, totally. Turns out, you know, that creation of vibration is pretty powerful. That's why it was the, you know, in the beginning was the word. Like if we go back to the Bible, all the creation stories start this way. There's a story, there's a sound.
And you've been quite prolific channeling music in. I mean, that's what it feels like. When I listen to your music, it feels like it's channeled in.
Yeah.
There's something sacred to it. And we were talking before we started recording about how I feel like so much of the music that is out in the world right now commercially is it's disempowering. You know, I want to look good for you. You broke my heart. I'm going to kill you. I mean, there's just really, it's so intense, and it's reflective of those so many of those shadows that we are, um, I feel like they're intensifying. So because they're going to be those shadows are going to be going through the death and rebirth process into the light. And what I love so much about your music is that, it is uh, cosmic light. I mean, that's really how I would describe it. I mean, how so? And you've put out what, 3 albums, 4 albums in the last few
Two,
years? Two.
just
Okay.
two. I'm
Yeah.
working on the third one right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's just so much music coming in, and to me, frequency and vibration. I'm always a healthcare geek, and in a lot of ways, my love of naturopathy and connecting people to their vitality is like, we like in the medical field, we've talked so much about the microbiome in the last 10-15 years. Everyone's taking a probiotic, and but really, to me, frequency is this untapped frontier. Frequency and
Mm.
vibration are this untapped frontier, that because it impacts us not only at a cellular level, but at an energetic level, at a soul level, at a spirit level, for better or worse, depending on what
Mm-hmm.
frequency we're connecting to. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I know that some people, when they put out music, they tune it to a specific hertz. They want it to be at the hertz of joy,
Mm-hmm.
or they want it to be at this certain frequency. As you're channeling in your music, do you ever, test for that? Or are you simply the conduit, not simply the conduit, that's kind of, but you know what I'm saying? Like, the music comes in and you write it down or you record it, and maybe goes through a little bit of editing or shifting, but for the most part, what's coming in is what's going out into the world. That makes sense.
Yeah, it is. It is really not mental. It is very channeled. And it's very similar energetically. They're very similar energetically to Icaros. So what I mean by that, and I actually, this is an exploration I'm interested in. I haven't talked to a lot of other musicians. I think this is true of creation at its deepest nature, is when there are blockages in the consciousness or in the energy field, um, we use music or art or dance to move them. And that's what that creative essence is. So for me, the music, like especially the music from Roots and Stars, all of those songs were born of moments when I was really uncomfortable in my own body. I wanted to check out. I wanted to, most of it was written during the pandemic. I wanted to not be who I was. I wanted to be somewhere else. I wanted to be doing something else. I didn't want to be where I was. And I had to sit down and focus the consciousness and be like, okay, what's the exact archetype, plant, ascended master, who's here to help me? Somebody freaking help me. and and in that moment there will be this like song or this like ditty or this rhythm or this image or this teacher who comes through. And I've learned over time to trust them, you know, and to just let them sing through my body. And a lot of it's born in work in ceremony with medicines. I'll give you just an example. So there's a song on the album called Holy Mother, Holy Father. And it's a song that was given through probably an 18-month initiation and really like integration, I should say, of Sarah LaCauley or Sarah Magdalene or Sarah Bun, however you want to say her name, who is the mythological daughter of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. And she came in during a period of my life in which I really needed to start reclaiming that fragment of my soul, this holy child of the Mother Father. And there was a time that I was holding ceremony for someone, and a pretty strong, heavy, dark, scary energy came into the field. And as the space holder, there's a part of me that gets scared too when that stuff comes in. I'm not perfect. I'm not like, fully awakened Buddha. So there's this part that's like, can I handle this? Can this person handle this? Can we be with this together, or is this dark, scary energy going to overtake us and whatever? And I just remember sitting there and like really slowing my consciousness down to find the truth. And Sarah just came in, and she's just like, I'm the light of the Holy Mother, Holy Father, and you are welcome here. If you seek freedom, oh, I am the light of the Holy Mother, Holy Father. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. And you are welcome here, oh darkness. And you are welcome here, oh shame. And you are welcome here, oh separation. I am unbreakable. And so in that moment, she was like giving me this codex of just like, remember who you are, Jane. You're a daughter of the living light. There is nothing, not one energy on this planet that can separate you from that light. And not only can you not be separated from that light, but when you truly remember who you are, you become a force field. And in the force field that you become, any shadow, any fragment, any darkness that enters into that field will naturally be alchemized into its true nature.
Well, when you watch the
Yeah.
recording, I hope you can see it as you were singing, and I can still see it now as the sun is coming through your window. In the upper corner there's been this light that's been in and out, like this circular light coming in and out. And I thought, well, hello, Sarah. It just
Yay!
was popping in to say hello and join you in that beautiful, beautiful expression. Because that's the part, right? Is integrating those parts of us, not being afraid of those parts of us, and almost, this is this path that you're walking as well, a healer, a priestess. I mean, I definitely see you as this priestess goddess archetype, and Lady of the Lake is the what comes in, but we sometimes we think, well, we have to just transcend our shadows completely and just be the light and just be the gift, but there's something false about it.
Yes, because the true light is born of its alchemization of the darkness. That's what the true light is. Like the true light is the capacity to look and to know that, to really look and see what's here, and to know that we are bigger than all of that. And I think when we were talking about like collectively, like this Pluto return that we were kind of like mentioning, and like, I know 100% in the depths of our being that the light that we truly are as a collective, as individuals, is 1000%, not even a hair of me distrusts that if we all remembered our true nature, this story would be over like that. Because that's what light is. it can't, darkness cannot live in its presence. My friend Noah, my friend and brother Noah, who's a real keeper of the true light, he always says to me, Janie, he's Australian, but I'm not gonna get this accent right in this moment, so I'm not gonna try. Janie, what is the darkness? What is the darkness? I don't know, Noah. He's like, it's the absence of the light. If you walk into a dark room and you turn on the light, the darkness is gone. Right? We don't have to go to battle with it. We don't have to like pretend, we don't have to be like, oh my God, I am the light, I am the light, I am the light, I am the light. Let me only focus on light. No, you just be in the darkness and you turn on your light. And light means full witnessing, full acknowledgement, full presence, full love, loving the shadow, really looking at it. And then the actual true light is born. Because the true light's like, I'm the light. There's nothing there's nothing I can't meet.
What is your vision of the world that's being born right now? Or the world, I like to say that the world has already been born. Mother Earth has already transformed herself, but this world that we're now awakening to, what is your vision of that world over the next 3 to 5 years? And of course, time is relative, right?
Yeah. I still think the next 3 to 5 years are going to be kind of rocky. I'm sorry to say. But I think what's going to happen is you're going to see more and more people waking up to this remembrance and starting the process of anchoring it really. Like there's a period of time in which when we have remembrance, we're not actually ready to give it away yet. We're not actually ready to do anything with it. There's this like sacred period of time where that remembrance needs to like flood our cells, where it needs to saturate us. And it needs to become so true in the bones of our being that we could never be swayed otherwise. And when we try to go too fast, we try to give it too fast, or we try to do something with it too fast, we run the risk of it's not that we won't ever get through it, but there's just like, you know what I mean? There's some possible shadows. So I think the first thing that's happening is you're starting to see a lot of people. Well, we've been in this beautiful Venus retrograde. We've been in this beautiful, really powerful Venus retrograde. And I think the first thing that's happening is a lot of us are really choosing like, you know what, I'm done with this story of pain and suffering. I've watched a lot of people in the last couple months of 2021 be like, I'm done. I'm getting divorced. I'm stopping the addiction. I'm done. So I think that's happening. And I think that you also are having a lot of people really considering and looking at what is living in me, in Gene Key's language, in the Venus sequence, that is stopping me from truly experiencing love. Because unless I can experience and let love in and give it, that's like the foundational molecule of New Earth, whatever you want to call it, of evolution, is love, right? If we can't hold love and truth and authenticity, which is all part of love, at the center of the new mandala, it will have cracks in the foundation. So I think we're in a period now where the first part of this anchoring is the foundational rewiring of love and of pair bonding, of like sister to sister, lover to lover, parent to child, those intimate pair bonds. And how are we restoring those as best we can right now? And I think as we do that, those fractals start to spin outwards, right? This is the fractal nature of consciousness. So, then it starts to like, wow, once we can anchor in pair bonds, then we can start anchoring in small communities, and we can start anchoring in this pair bond back with the earth. Each of us are pair bonded to Gaia. So I think you are going to start seeing people who are ready and doing that work. And we're going to start seeing pockets over the next few years where it's like, whoa, there's like kind of a functioning community here in right relationship to the earth. And at the same time, I think you're going to see increased chaos, increased restriction, like increased, because that's what happens when the light grows, the shadow grows. So I think we're in for a period of a lot of dynamism, a lot of duality, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I think Richard Rudd says through 2027. I've heard other people say through 2024. For me, it feels like the farthest I can see right now is until 2024, and it feels like it's a beautiful, fertile, dangerous, live time on Earth.
Yeah, I think that our warrior archetypes will serve us as needed.
That's right.
As needed. They're also an important part of our integration, but not necessarily to be more Pallas Athena versus Eris, you know, to be more of the
Mm-hmm.
strategist first versus just lobbing the chaotic mess into the water balloon into the crowd. That we
Totally.
still will need those parts. And yeah, you know, it's so interesting with this Venus retrograde because when she comes out of her retrograde, she's going to start traveling with Mars and Vesta. And it's like, I've been using the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel, and it's like Hansel and Gretel, these innocent children traveling with the crone, the priestess, the godmother, instead of the wicked witch who eats them. So there's this beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
loving, um, she's there to protect them. And yet there's Mars, also the innocent male, the innocent masculine, or immature masculine, whatever you want to call him, protecting the feminine. Also, it's this beautiful trio traveling together for 6 weeks. So even though some of the astrology and the timing is hard with the US Pluto return, and for those of you who aren't familiar with that, Pam Gregory has a wonderful video on the US Pluto return that she did. But so every time you see some of the shadow energy coming in, there are these beautiful moments of love and support, and also helping us to bridge that. It's like the river floods, but here are these bridges where you can walk over the river and not be swept away. Or if you want to use Uranus, the earthquakes and the volcanoes and the chasms, that there are
Phew.
still ways to traverse. And we're going to have to, this is where our creativity gets to come in, because status quo just isn't going to work anymore. So we
Yeah.
have to dive deep into our creativity and our partnership with one another and say, let's work together to creatively, I want to say, go around the blockage, or go through the blockage in whatever way we can. Because I totally agree with the timeline that you're talking about, that the next few years there is this, I just see this cell splitting, you know, the mitosis of the cell splitting, and there's this world and this world. And then there are the people who are the bridges in between,
Mm-hmm.
which very much feels like my daughter's generation, the 20 somethings,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the ones who are awake, but still not letting go of the more conventional way of, more mainstream way of doing things. They're
Mm-hmm.
able to somehow navigate much more gracefully than I can.
It's been a weird world for them. They're like, what? What's going on? We just gotta like make it through. But thank you for that. That was such a beautiful, like my soul just receiving that story of Hansel and Gretel in such a deep way. And there's a couple of, I know we're reaching the end of our time together, but there's a couple of things that feel really resonant that I'd like to reflect back into the field, if that's all right.
Oh, please. Yes.
I this first of all, my heart just feels really like touched that Venus and Mars are now going to be walking together in Vesta for 6 weeks. That feels really resonant in my own personal life. So I'm like personally just like receiving that. And that they're walking with the crone, you know, and not the witch. And, you know, you use the word innovation, and I'm hearing one of my other teachers come into the fields, and This is my brother and friend Keone, who's my fern medicine teacher who lives here on the islands and the island of Maui, and his work is really exploding. Like the codex of consciousness this man carries is just insane, and the commitment he's made to carrying the fern consciousness is so incredible. And every year he chooses a fern of the year. And we had for 2020, the fern of the year was the fern of divine truth, which is a feminine fern, Paiua Paiua. And in 2021, he chose Baikal fern, which is a masculine fern, and it's a fern of courage. So feminine and then masculine. And then what he chose for 2021 is, or for 2022, is innovation.
Mm.
And he says that 2022 is the year of great works. It's the year where we really finally come together imperfectly and we start to build things together. And that doesn't mean we're building, retreat centers and communities. It means we're building new architecture. So when you were speaking to, coming together, Venus, Mars coming back together and really being like, listen, the fields are imperfect. I still have wounds. You still have wounds. We're still learning together. But if we bring our lights together, we're even more amplified. And how are we going to use the mating of our light, the bringing together of our light to amplify our power to either reroute, bust through, recreate, innovate, as it were, pathways through this mess, And that feels that like what you were sharing is just ringing so true in the center of my being. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And, I believe we're going to have Vesta and Saturn come together in the sign of Aquarius this year. I think this spring. I'd have to go back and look at the exact dates, but Vesta to me represents divine feminine, divine mother. And Saturn is that loving father energy. And they're coming together in Aquarius, the sign of innovation and community. So that's so perfect.
Turns out, I think everything is actually always happening in perfect and divine order.
It really does. And it's, speaking of divine order, I feel like we could just continue having this conversation for hours and I may just have to bring you back, but we had talked about you maybe doing something live, maybe doing something pre-recorded. I can definitely splice in something at the end, a recording of yours or a video or something if you'd like, or if you'd like to share something in person now, we can do that. But before you share in person, because I would love for that to close out our time together. So first, I just want to say thank you so, so, so much for spending time with us today. This has been like, my soul just feels like it got this dose of really yummy medicine talking with you today. And I know that everyone
I feel the same.
Going to say the same thing. Tell us how we can find you, find your music, find your work, connect with you, follow you, work with you, etc.
Thank you. This is what I mean. Like we wove some really beautiful fields together and just like feels really good. So I feel alive. So people can contact me. I have two websites. One is my shamanic mentorship website, and that is janeislistening.com. This is how I work with people one-on-one and sometimes offer workshops and masterclasses. And then my music website is janemayersounds.com. That has a lot of my teachings and transmissions and poetry and music all run through there. And I'm on Instagram at janemayersounds. And I have my Spotify and my SoundCloud, and I'll give you those so that you can link them in because they're
perfect.
Longer URLs.
Yeah, I'll put them all down for YouTube. I'll put them all down below, and then on my blog, I'll put them in there too.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and would be really happy. I'm in a period in my life. I'm getting ready to enter into a really beautiful period of my life where Jupiter's coming online and a lot of this scorpionic stuff is starting to lessen a little bit. And just really welcome connections, like like if you're someone who's listening to this and this resonates for you, please feel free to send me an email. Like I love to hear and connect with people, even if, you know, no matter what, how the divine nature of our relationship is intended to go, I'm so grateful to be weaving with people who are aligned and on the same path. So,
Agreed.
and I do think I will offer a song based on the mythology that you just shared.
Perfect. Beautiful. I love it.
So this bowl that gave this song, it's a ruby bowl, and so it's carrying this really powerful royal frequency. And actually, it was the connection with this bowl. This is like the medicine of the mystery with sound and instruments. It was the connection with this bowl that actually brought in Sarah to me. And this is one of Sarah's songs that she gave to me during that time, and it's about calling in the beloved. So many of us, when we think about the beloved, we think about our external partner. But the truth is that the true beloved is within us. This is the heart of God. This is the light, right? And it's only when we build these blueprints from the inside out, when we really know that the true beloved is within us, that it can manifest in an authentic way externally. So, yeah, we'll sing this song for everybody today. I call you home, oh beloved. I call you home, oh beloved. Where have you gone, oh beloved? I call you home. On Eden's land we will gather, hand in hand. Now we're together, no longer alone. We're together. I call you home. Oh, 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 beloved. There are no walls to stop us, no darkened halls to betray us, and there are no lies to separate us. Beloved, we are home. Oh, oh, beloved.
to fear. There is nothing to fear, and you are welcome here. Oh, darkness, and you are welcome here. Oh, shame, and you are welcome here. Oh, separation, I am unbreakable. I'm the light of the Holy Mother, Holy Father, and you are welcome here if you seek freedom. Oh, I am the light of the Holy Mother, Holy Father, impenetrable, unbreakable. Oh, I can welcome in the darkness. Oh, I can welcome in all the shame. Oh, I can welcome in the separation. I am unbreakable. And any vows I have taken, or any vows set in stone, not in the light of God, I am breaking. I am breaking. Oh, I am breaking now. Because I'm the light of the Holy Mother, Holy Father, and with this heart of love, I am unbreakable. I'm the light of the Holy Mother, Holy Father. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. Oh, I am the light of the Holy Mother, Holy Father, and you are welcome here. If you seek freedom.